What's the craziest crime you or somebody in your family has committed? My friend got blackout drunk and stole a bulldozer that had the keys left in it. He turned it on and obviously didn't know how to drive it, so he just ended up making the scoopy part go up and down for a bit before the cops came. They actually let him go too. My sister-in-law worked on a ski hill. One week there was a promotion by a company where they would blow up big inflatables, like the big gorillas you see in car lots. She had seen them blow them up and deflate them for days, so she knew what the deflated ones looked like. One day she was leaving work and one of these deflated mascot thingies was right behind her car. My sister-in-law has never stolen anything in her entire life, but at that moment she decided out of the blue that she wanted that blow-up. She plopped it in the back and drove home. When I came to visit a couple weeks later, she was freaking out about it. She asked me if I wanted it, just to get the evidence out of her house. That is the story of how I came to own a 2-story high inflatable cow. My dad's older brother came home from the war in Vietnam to find that his wife had been cheating on him with his best friend. He locked them both in the friend's house and burned it down with them in it. He held the firefighters off with a rifle until he was sure they couldn't be saved. Then he shot himself. This was before I was born, but I've seen some newspaper clippings about it. This was in the 1970s in New Orleans. I'm not going to give more info as it'd be easy to tie back to me, same last name, or his daughter, who was a little under 2 years old at the time, and I don't want that. My dad brought in a banana tree to the US from his home village in Kerala. He literally walked through customs with a tree and a pot in his arms. The customs lady asked him what he was thinking, and he just replied that the banana tree was from his mother's garden. The customs lady must have thought my dad was crazy, but she just let him walk right through. We still have that tree, and its offspring. My grandfather's cousin stabbed a waiter to death because he wouldn't let him use the employees-only restroom in his restaurant. A distant cousin got her terminally ill father to give her power of attorney and then stole all of his money, so she wouldn't have to split it with her brother. This was a couple of generations back, early 20th century, but there was this guy who was constantly getting drunk and harassing my great-aunt. So, one of her male friends dressed up in an Easter bunny outfit, put a bat in its giant fake carrot, and beat the dude with it. He got away with it, but I'm sure it helped that half the community was waiting for the day the guy's liver finally gave out. My dad told me he once snuck into a tire warehouse. He cut the alarm and came in through a window on the roof and stole a bunch of tires. My dad's side of the family grew up as New Hampshire Hicks. My grandfather was stabbed in 2 different bar fights and burned down an entire country club because he thought they were too stuck up. He was never caught and went on to earn a Bronze and Silver Star in the Korean War, but unfortunately lost his leg too. I worked at a movie theater when Back to the Future was originally released. We used to take the entire movie ticket instead of tearing them and resell them to the next group coming in. The old theater was massive. Sat 600 people. We probably made about $15,000 between 2 of us a month or so. Adjusted for inflation, it's about $37,000. We were the richest high school kids in our town. My uncle sold Tim Allen the cocaine that got him sent to prison in the late 70s. My sister stole a puppy. Just walked into the pet store, stuffed her up her jacket. Looking at these other things, she seems a lot less bold than she did before. My uncle went to prison for chaining a cop to the back of his bike and driving down the highway. This happened in the 1960s before I was born, so I do not have many details due to the timing and fact he married into the family, and that side of my family is not very close at all. What I do know is my uncle was a part of a very violent gang. I know nothing about what led to the attempted murder. Yes, the cop survived somehow, so I do not know if the cop was good or bad. But I do not believe very many people, if any, deserve to be tortured in such a manner or any manner. Not really a crime, as in not necessarily illegal, but my grandfather had 2 separate families in 2 different cities. Named both of his firstborn sons after himself, and they both named sons after themselves too, including me. So I share my name with my father and grandfather, as well as a half-uncle and at least 1 cousin. My husband's dad killed the guy who his then girlfriend was cheating on him with. He was supposed to serve a life term but got out because of a clerical error. He did manual labor on a local park, and apparently the guys who helped were supposed to get a reduced sentence. However, he was not supposed to. I think my husband talked about it once. Also, my husband's half-brother, same murderous dad, killed his business partner. He would have gotten away with it, however. He moved the body when he found out construction was going to start in that spot. And what were they going to build there? A prison. He's currently serving a life sentence. My husband has never met his half-brother. He also has 2 half-sisters from the same dad who are law-abiding citizens. Not sure if it should be considered a crime, but one of my great-aunts was in an abusive marriage with a war vet who took to beating her and forcing her to play Russian roulette when he drank. One night, she managed to rig the gun, so when he took his turn, he blew his brains out. She wasn't charged. My granddad accidentally shot his brother in the ass. He meant to shoot something out of his hand, but missed. Drunk, genius, hillbilly shit. Thankfully, my dad married well, and I turned out all right. One time, my uncle put ranch dressing on a dry-aged New York strip steak that cost $70. got stoned, drunk, and rode an electric scooter with a friend, only to end up in front of a huge fence with barbed wire I decided to climb. Huge mistake, it was a military base. I ran out of there at speed light when I realized. Fortunately, I escaped. In college, we got a new printer and printed off a bunch of fairly convincing $20 bills, roughed them up, and used them at a bunch of fast food restaurants. Didn't realize how dumb it was until years later. My grandfather was often drunk, but when he wasn't drunk, he would pretend to be drunk so that the Soviet Communist Party members responsible for interrogating all those who might be opposed to communism thought and said, he's a drunk. We'll question him last. This gave him time to gather resources so he could escape with my dad. So, although public inebriation probably almost certainly wasn't a crime in most Eastern European countries at the time, late 40s, he would have been gulag-bound if he'd been caught in the charade. My father, when I was still very young, used a fake name and pretended to be a wedding planner for a young couple. That young couple hired him, since he seemed trustworthy and is an excellent liar, giving him access to their savings for wedding supplies and such that would be needed. Instead, he stole all of the money out of their account and then ran away with it. As far as I am aware, he was never caught, and the money was never returned to them. The worst part is that the poor couple never even got their wedding and had almost nothing left afterwards. My grandpa wouldn't obey the train warnings. He would try and beat the train rather than wait. First time he got hit in his new convertible on the way to prom with my grandma. Had barely started on the payments and car was totaled. Luckily, they were both okay. Second time was a little less reckless, but still dumb. He was driving a semi and it broke down on the tracks. He kept trying to get the tractor trailer to start rather than lose his rig and load. Semi got hit by the train. Total loss and fucked up his back. I browsed Reddit through the Chrome browser. On mobile. My father committed one of the first computer crimes in the 90s. A ton of files were corrupted due to a code he created because they fire him. FBI invaded our home and arrested him. Was sent to federal prison for 4 years, which was interesting because there was never a crime committed of its nature before. They made a forensics file episode about it. I ran for president of the United States and won. There is a family legend about some great uncles of mine stealing their dad's corpse from the funeral home. They went out to the woods with it and got drunk, then returned the body the next morning. Edited to add, so I talked to my mom and I missed or misremembered some wonderful details. They broke into the funeral home by backing Dad's work truck through a wall. Dad was a professional burglar who would have appreciated the irony of a thief's corpse being stolen, thought it was hilarious, and been proud his sons pulled the stunt off. They played a game of poker with Dad's body. And at some point they got caught because they attended the funeral the next day in handcuffs. My mom said that the father was apparently the one person in our family who never drank, so they weren't going out to get drunk with Dad one last time. The sons likely had a beer though. My cousin was affiliated with a 1% MC. He was not a patch member, but would do jobs for them. He got arrested for beating someone with a baseball bat who allegedly had gambling debt with the MC. He did 3 years and was on parole for a few years after that. He's still a shady character, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was still doing dumb shit. My uncle stole one of those oil candles from our table at a Hard Rock cafe once. When we got outside, he pulled it from his jacket with it still lit. A member of my family once took part in an armed insurrection against the United States. He even led an army that was part of that insurrection. The state of Virginia just removed his statue from the U.S. Capitol building. I downloaded the movie Pootie Tang from the Bay. Uncle Jeff ate a few guys in Milwaukee. I stepped on my dog's foot once accidentally, and boy do I regret it. I was offered a glass of 25 years aged old par, and I mixed it with some Pepsi. The look of horror on my buddies' faces is still engraved in my memory more than 20 years later. As a 10-year-old, I violated Section 508 of the Communications Act of 1934, received underhanded assistance in a purportedly bona fide contest of intellectual knowledge or intellectual skill. Basically, got manipulated into being on a rigged kids game show, which was canceled days before it was supposed to air on Fox because someone spilled the beans. I didn't realize until years later what was actually going on. Last year, my psychotic mother burned down my childhood home that her, my dad, my niece, my sibling, and sibling's partner lived in because she believed my dad was cheating on her, despite no evidence, and this was not the first time she accused my dad of cheating with no evidence. Effectively, she destroyed everything we had built and kept in that home, along with my dad's dog and my sister's cat. Cat was burned up, so never found, but the dog died of asphyxiation in my niece's room under her bed. Then, after the fire, in what I can only construe as an act of desperation, she went to my bank and stole all of the money out of my accounts because she was secondary on the accounts. I was working on changing banks, but my new bank had yet to finalize the creation of my new account. Moral of the story is take your parents off your bank accounts when you turn 18. She's now serving time in a county jail for the arson because she took a plea deal and got a reduced sentence, which I still believe was utter crap. She played the poor old lady act to the judge, and he took pity on her that she did not deserve. This is the woman who eviscerated my self-esteem and made my life hell ever since I was born. She was toxic and abusive, never told me the truth about anything, and is a greedy, manipulative person. I feel no shame in saying that I do not care about her. She's lost any right to my love and respect. My sister shoplifts uncontrollably. She shoplifts everything everywhere she goes. Her daughter just turned 1, and she has stolen every bit of formula her daughter ever used. It's insane she's never been caught. Damn, the FBI is on fire today. When he was a teenager, my dad robbed a mother's cookies truck. Cookies for months. When I was a dumb 6th grader, my best friend was a hardcore vegetarian. A McDonald's was going up practically in the backyard of her fam's condo. We snuck out and spray painted things like meat equals death on it, keeping in mind that I was a happy omnivore, lol. But then we pulled up these rocks the size of our heads and threw them at 2 huge 7 to 8 feet windows. Think of the windows on the front of a Mercedes that let you see the entire inside. Took a couple attempts to get them to shatter. We snuck out a lot. There was one time around age 15 when we applied heavy makeup, wore our slag clothes, and got into a frat party. She lived walking distance to campus, and smoked pot for the first time. Ooh, so my great aunt disappeared off the face of the earth after her daughter's wedding, and nobody had any clue what happened. Foul play wasn't suspected or anything, however her shotgun was missing. Well, like a month ago we found out she died last year. She had apparently skipped jury duty to go to the wedding, and instead of doing anything logical, she straight up ran away and lived in hiding in a backwoods town in Washington. No letters or anything, she just decided that the most effective way to get around jury duty to go to a wedding was to live in hiding for 30 years. I used to drive for my weed dealer. I was a new buyer, but I never asked questions and was cool with him. His car broke down and asked if anyone could drive him. I said I would, and he liked that. I have my back windows tinted, but not my front windows. I'd pick him up and we'd drive almost all day. It was pretty chill. He's give me free weed and pay me $250 a day. I still worked my part-time delivery job, so I was very happy. He got his car fixed and didn't need me to drive him around anymore. Which is fine, considering his ex snitched on him, and he got busted a couple weeks later. I was in middle school, 13 to 14, and my buddy and I snuck out of the house to go cause mischief. We did this almost every weekend, and we really only snuck out just because we knew we shouldn't be. The worst we ever did was TP our other friend. Other than that, we just rode our bikes around. Except, one time we met up with a couple girls that my friend knew. We were going around our town and tipped a porta potty, put someone's patio furniture in their tree, stupid shit like that. My buddy thought he could show off his muscles by pulling a mailbox out of the ground. I said he couldn't, and I was right. To one-up him, I pulled a mailbox right out of the ground, and we laughed like little girls as I set it on the homeowner front step. Not 10 minutes later, cops rolled around with their spotlight on. Found us, not the mailbox, and brought us home. My dad made me go back to the house, and the mailbox was in the ground already. He made me knock and apologize to the homeowner, who happened to be a 90-year-old woman with cancer. That straightened me up real quick, and I never did stuff like that again. Only later did I find out what I did was a felony, and I didn't feel like living that life anymore. I once snuck a camera in a movie theater and made a CM recording of a movie that I uploaded to the internet. Human smuggling. My great-great-great-grandfather's aunts ran a station on the Underground Railroad, which was morally right but legally wrong. Not an actual crime, but when I was like 13, I was watching NSFW pictures on my parents' computer. Long story short, my dad got blamed on and paid with week on couch. So before I was born, my parents were apparently going through some tough financial issues and were facing eviction if they couldn't come up with a certain amount of money by a certain date. My father decided the best way to handle this situation would be to rob a bank. So the story, as I was told, it goes like this. My father walked into a small bank with a ski mask on and his hand in his pocket. He went up to a teller and handed her a bag, telling her he was robbing the place. He had a gun and exactly how much money he wanted, which turned out to be exactly the amount he needed to avoid eviction. He got the money, apologized to the teller, and then left. He was never caught. The next part of the story is a little weird, and even I have a hard time believing it, but I know my dad, he is no liar. Apparently a year or two later, my dad went back to the same bank he robbed every day until he found the teller he robbed previously. He walked up without a mask and handed her an envelope and immediately left the area. In the envelope was the exact amount of money he stole and a note saying that the money was for the teller, a gift, and how incredibly sorry he was for scaring her when he robbed the place. Again, he was never caught. My father is a very honorable man who was raised in poverty on an Indian reservation. Because of the abuse he went through, both at home and at school, residential schools have a bit of a history to them, he vowed that his kids would never have to go through what he did. I truly believe that robbing that bank was a result of that vow, but emotionally hurting that woman at the bank really ate away at him, so he risked getting arrested to try and make it right. One of my great-uncles was highly involved in sanction busting for the apartheid state of Rhodesia. He worked for the Netherlands Bank of Rhodesia and was forced to stay and work through threats to his family by the minority government. Luckily, he managed to convince the government that his kids simply must have a British public school education and that his wife would escort them to London for the start of term. Whilst they were abroad, they were taken into protective custody by the British government, and he managed to slip over one of the land borders to safety. He was flown back to the UK for debriefing and was kept in the country for a while. He took up farming in the deepest and quietest bit of countryside he could find. My uncle has stolen allegedly over 1,000 cars and done other various nefarious things to fund his heroin habit. Got 8 years in prison, got clean during that, but was diagnosed with cancer after 7 years of prison and died like 2 months later. My cousin's husband got caught on a predator chaser's live stream trying to kidnap a 14-year-old boy. My father tells the story of a time his friends picked him up in a stolen Camaro for a joyride, and at the end of the night, the stupid driver decided to use a gas card they found in the glove box to fill up the tank. When everyone in the car realized that this would help the cops find the car, they drove it to a lot, stripped it of all the parts they could use on other cars, and lit a gasoline-soaked rag and hung it out of the gas tank. This explosion rocked the town, and no one ever figured out who did it other than us hearing the story 35 years later. My mom dated a man who was a mafia hitman. He killed a pretty high-profile target, too. My dad grew weed occasionally. My brothers once stole my dad's car and destroyed it because they worked for him for a while, and he didn't end up paying him. I've sold illicit goods, mostly because I was quitting and has them on hand. I guess I have a family of degenerates. My uncle used to dress up with a group of friends as DEA agents in the 80s and raid crack houses, only to take the drugs and consume them. I stole a couch the other day. It was exhilarating. One of my family worked for the UN in Africa for some mandates back in the 70-80s. He needed to bribe some guys in order to reach places. So he bribed the guy, traveled down to the destination. In the meanwhile, another guy took over the charge of the area and found out that he bribed the enemy. So G got arrested and thrown into jail. He only got out because he has dual citizenship with the UK, and those guys bailed him out very quickly after his home country of Switzerland failed for a course of 3+ months. As 6-year-old child, I set something on fire, almost caused an entire house block to go up in flames. I just like that this question gives you the option of it being you or somebody in your family. Not family, but a good friend, so pretty close to family. Stole the mall golf cart that was used to help seniors and disabled people. Had security cashing him down and tried running it through the huge double glass doors into the parking lot. He got away. Shitty thing to do now, but 25 years ago it was pretty funny. My bio dad is a pedo, does that count? My friends and I broke into my school at 5 a.m. and installed a 30-foot tall Christmas tree in the courtyard. We propped it up by taking the cover off a drain and placing the tree in it. It was B&E for a good cause. My uncle stopped taking his meds and became convinced my aunt was poisoning him. Shot her in the chest. My cousin, her youngest son, found her. My great-great-grandfather stabbed and killed a hairdresser with a hair comb. The 1990s in my country were some serious years when banditism was blooming right after USSR fell. So my dad claims to have beaten a drug addict because he hanged a cat from his balcony. He claims to have protected multiple kiosks from other bandits, and he also said that he and his friends have buried a man alive for murdering a girl. They have gone far away in the steppe, dug out a grave, put the man in it, and buried him. This one is a bit lighthearted, but I technically may have committed a war crime. I started doing stand-up comedy before my second deployment, and when we shipped out to Afghanistan, I didn't want to lose the momentum that I'd gained, so I would do shows in the chow hall, and I ordered a bunch of books about how to succeed at stand-up. One of them suggested practicing crowd work, where you talk to the crowd by asking about their job, where they're from, etc. After a raid, we detained some Taliban combatants and had to hold them for a few days before the intelligence guys could come pick them up. So when I was on my guard shifts, I'd have an interpreter, and I'd ask things like where they were from and what they did for a living, and then I'd try to crack jokes about it. I wasn't a dick, but it wasn't all that funny either. After they got picked up and the intelligence guys started interrogating them, they said, "We told the other guy," and then my commander got an angry phone call about how I technically performed unconventional interrogation and should never do it again. I haven't done crowd work since. I have worked on my genealogy for many years, and I've found 3 crimes of note. There are others, yes, but these really stand out. Asterisk, a GRT grandfather was arrested for committing the crime of bastardy. The charges were dropped when he later married the young lady in question, my GRT grandmother. Asterisk, another colonial GRT grandfather, forget how many GRTs, was fined 50 shillings for the crime of being kind to Quakers. Apparently a high crime in his Puritan town. Asterisk, finally, and Putnam. One of the girls that accused Tituba of witchcraft, kicking off the Salem witch trials, was a first cousin 10 times removed. One of my great-grandpas drove a truck containing stuff for making alcohol for Al Capone during Prohibition. Mother's cousin of some level, not sure on removed or third denotations, had a small business in NJ for several years. Never produced, sold, or marketed anything anyone was aware of. He left a message on our answering machine saying, "Goodbye and best wishes." Confused us all. ATF, US Marshals, FBI, DEA, and IRS raided the shop, only to find it empty as relative dude was already yachting to Cuba, where he then jetted to the other side of the planet. Humorless guys in suits randomly checked in with family members for several years thereafter asking for his whereabouts. We had no idea. Got an old-fashioned postcard from him years later from Phuket. Haven't heard a word from him in the years since. No effing idea what he did. I caught a distant cousin once at an Amish farm humping a horse. He's in prison now. My cousin was charged with assault with a frozen burrito after he was 10 cents short. The guy at 7-Eleven wouldn't let him take it. He got mad and threw it at the cashier and broke the fellow's nose. Petty crime, but at the time it felt like the perfect heist. I was a teenager with some friends at this restaurant that served your meal in this large round branded platter/tray. For some reason, I was determined to walk out the front door with one. I came up with a plan. My friend and I held hands so that we made a bridge. Set the tray on the bridge. Put a coat over the tray. I had another friend sit on the tray. We walked out the front door carrying him and singing for he's a jolly good fellow. It held the mixtapes in my car for years until I upgraded to a stolen USPS plastic mail bin. My godfather was arrested for arranging to meet with an underage girl online. Here's the weird stuff. The girl was my age. We have the same name. My dad later met the girl's mom, many years later and at an unrelated event, and they fell in love and are getting married. So now she's my stepsister. We don't talk to my godfather anymore. My cousin and some friends decided to run their bill, leave without paying, aka dine and ditch, at a Bennigan's. Their server ran after them to attempt to collect payment, and my cousin/friends ran over and killed her. This led to a nationwide policy change in most big restaurant companies where they 1. Stopped taking this kind of thing out of the server's paycheck, and 2. Implemented a strict don't follow policy for customers who ran their bills. When I was 15, the bank foreclosed on our family home. My dad was pretty upset, so he, with the help of myself and my brothers, completely gutted the house. We took the ceiling fans, cabinets, all appliances, every bit of copper wire, the fireplace, a giant cast iron monster. Wasn't easy. Front and back deck board by board, the banisters, anything that had any value whatsoever. We even took the water heater and sold it to the real estate agency that was selling the house, which they then had to reinstall. For the record, I'm not particularly proud of this, but I still tell the story quite a bit. I'm not sure how he got away with it either. Maybe it was because we still technically owned the house when we did it, or maybe they just couldn't prove it was us. My grandma and her lover murdered my grandpa. Probably 9 or 10 years later, her lover, now husband, went on to kill her. After she was dead, he went on to remarry and killed that wife, too. They suspect he killed his previous wife, who had passed shortly before my grandpa did. He confessed on his deathbed and mentioned that they killed his 90-something-year-old mother as well. My extended family likes to try to pretend that he made my grandma do it, but he didn't. She did it because she wanted out of her marriage. My grandpa was a nasty, abusive kind of guy, but she wasn't any better at the end of the day. He was in his 30s, married her when she was 17, and then had 6 kids with him. At least one of them, my mom, isn't actually his, and there are probably plenty of his unknown kids out there as well. Grandma died on my 13th birthday, and I used to think that the number 13 was legit cursed because of all of the superstitions surrounding it. It was just bad timing, that's all. My father was in the military. He came back from a deployment to find that his stripper girlfriend was stealing all of his things and money due to having access to his bank accounts on account of being away. He stole a military helicopter and flew it home to stop her. My uncle burned down my other uncle's house when he found out he was gay. Weird turn of events, he got out of prison a few years ago and moved in with my gay uncle and his husband. They're best friends again. I have an uncle who got charged with murder/conspiracy to murder along with a kid I went to kindergarten with. I didn't know that uncle very well, but I know that particular classmate ended up as part of the Norteños. They apparently joined forces to murder one of my aunt's best friends while I was in high school. His Facebook profile pic is one of him posing in his cell now. So, at least he's doing well enough to have a phone. My grandfather's brother kidnapped his mother-in-law, flew her to another country, and cut her passport. My grandfather went to prison for trying to fix a professional baseball game in 1959. When I was 12, I shot out the back window of a cop car with one of those wrist rocket slingshots. It shattered into a million pieces. The car skidded to a halt. The cops got out and started waving guns around, but me and the other kids decided it was better to book it into the woods on our bikes than get taken home in a cop car. We knew those woods like the backs of our hands, and the cops were on foot, so we all got away scot-free. The next day, the story was in the newspaper, and my dad spent 15 minutes railing on about how parents didn't bring their kids up right these days, and if it was my kid, I'd beat his ass until it shined like a new penny. I listened attentively and agreed with assessment of the day's youth. My old man stole a multi-million-dollar luxury racing yacht. He set up a test drive with a bankrupt German businessman, arranged to sail to Spain to meet him, and just kept going. For 40 years. Much of my childhood years were spent living on this yacht with my parents, island hopping in the Mediterranean. Lots of memories of hanging over the stern in isolated bays, helping my dad paint a new name on. And we had a whole bundle of different national flags to choose from. I just thought that was normal boat stuff. Had a pretty cool AK-47 stashed away too, mainly for any attempted piracy. Stole an abused dog once and found it a new home.